Hi friends, welcome to the third episode of the Plant Peace podcast. I hope that you're having a really wonderful day today. I know my day has been super chill and laid back. Woke up and it was -4 degrees outside, so I've only left the house to get mail. It's so cold. I have a heater at my feet and this blanket right here, and still a little chilly, but I'm grateful for all the warm stuff we have. I hope that your day is maybe a little bit warmer than mine has been. So today we're going to be talking about pigs. We're going to be reading a little bit out of order from how the book is written. We're going to be skipping the cow section and going to pigs. We will address cows. But right now we have kind of an exciting opportunity where I am going to be interviewing Matt Johnson, who was going to be on trial for a felony case of rescuing a piglet from a factory farm and also wiretapping and surveilling a certain farm that was performing ventilation shutdown, which is what I'm going to talk about it here, but it's where they shut off all the airways and essentially slowly roast the pigs alive. And I'll be going more into that as we progress with this episode. But he was being charged on those two counts and then a third charge for a new ag gag law that's passed in the state of Iowa. And a day before his trial began, the prosecutor dropped all the charges against him. All of them. He could have faced kind of serious prison time for this. And that's what I was going to talk with him about. So now our topic has changed a bit to, wow, they're afraid to take us to court. They know that what they're doing is ethically and morally not okay, and that a jury will likely see that even in the heart of animal agriculture, which is the state of Iowa, at least the heart in the United States. So this is a huge win for animal rights, and they actually argued the dismissal, and they were like, no, we actually want the chance to take you guys to stand. And they were like, no. The judge was so confused. He's like, what? You're fighting the dismissal of the case? And so everyone's just confused. But there was going to be about 40 activists coming to support him in trial, and now they're still coming anyways. People have bought their plane tickets, they've driven this far, so people are already in the hotels. And we're going to be spending about 4 or 5 days down there with them. And now we're kind of scheduling different actions that we're going to take to really show that, hey, if this law is so unjust that you don't even think it's going to win in court, it should be overturned. And so there's going to be a series of protests. They're still mid-planning them right now because they were expecting to be in trial and now they're not, which is amazing. I'm filming this episode a few days early since I am going to be traveling, so I will be in a bit of most likely a different outfit for the end half of this video. But yeah, so that's so exciting. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. I guess today for you guys, different day for me. But first we're going to go over the pig chapter of the book so you get kind of a good idea of the industry and what's going on. And then we're going to talk to an activist who is really deeply, working to liberate animals and to fight from a legal standpoint for their rights and their protection. And so far we've had a lot of wins. When I was arrested for chaining myself to a facility that was doing ventilation shutdown, they dropped the charges on me too when I called them to the stand. And so they're afraid of us. And that's just honestly amazing. These industry giants that have billions of dollars and are mass murdering all these animals are scared of a few people who are just willing to peacefully protest and are actually yeah, I'll take you to trial. I'll do that. I will risk my freedom to make this point and to fight for their freedom. And they're terrified of that. So hopefully this is going to be a super empowering episode. So yes, okay, without further ado, let's dive into, where are we? Okay, gonna talk about pigs. God, I love pigs. Pigs are some of my favorite animals in the world. I didn't know that until becoming a vegan and meeting pigs. Sadly, one of my favorite pigs actually just passed away, so that's devastating. Named Archie, and he was living in Iowa from Sanctuary with his best friend Iron Man. and they were rescued from a truck crash, actually, transporting pigs. And, they were supposedly healthy and happy at the sanctuary for quite some time. They were really young, though. They're like basically babies. But apparently Archie had a tumor that, like, I think burst through his appendix, or I don't remember exactly what happened, but he had a tumor that ended up killing him, and so that was really sad. He would always like run up and like roll over, and he'd really want belly rubs, and him and Iron Man would like run up kind of like screaming isn't the right word, but like loudly being exclamative when I would come and see them, and they were just so sweet. They were my favorites. So that's sad. But I'm glad he got a really good life while he was at Iowa Farm Sanctuary. He got so much love and care, and hopefully, he's at peace now, and hopefully Iron Man is able to, find a new friend to bond with. He was just moved into the pen with the larger pigs because they're smaller, because they're younger, and they've been kind of bullying them, which is sad. So hopefully he gets acclimated to, the pig social dynamic soon. Sad. Okay, well, hi Luna. The cat Luna is just staring at me. Hello. She's very wired up because it's cold, so she can't really go outside. So she's just, all of her like hyperactiveness is just happening all around the house, which is sometimes very chaotic, but we love her. Alrighty. Pigs. Here's pictures. Pigs. Oh, podcast people, you can't see the pictures. So for those of you listening, I am also uploading, I'm filming videos of this as well. And so I upload the videos to YouTube and post them to my Facebook. So if you ever want to like see me talking and showing pictures and stuff, just head on over to my YouTube channel and you will see that. Alrighty. Of the most common animals humans farm for food, pigs are some of the smartest by our scale of measurement. They have displayed cognitive capabilities that surpass those of dogs and of 3-year-old children. They form close friendships, often with other species, and are extremely protective of their young. They are relatively peaceful animals and keep themselves and their space clean when given the chance. This makes the horrific manner in which they are treated and confined, which they are extremely conscious of, to be incomprehensible. Pigs enjoy rooting in the ground and finding their own food, which they have preferences for. In the industry, they are fed the same shitty food on an automatic system day in and day out. Unfortunately, many are fed literal trash, plastic specifically. Bags of bread and other stale food wrapped in plastic are heated up to high temperatures and turned into a sort of brown dust, which is added to pig feed. These microplastics get into their bloodstream and flesh and end up in those who consume them. On any given day, there are around 71 million pigs in factory farms, while over 161 million are slaughtered every year in the US alone. The images of pigs running around in pastures and playing in the grass is really only a reality in sanctuaries. Virtually every animal sold for their flesh was raised in extreme confinement conditions, and if they were not, then they face the ultimate betrayal as their caretaker sends them to slaughter. These are some pigs held captive in a CAFO. This is an image that I took here around the Fairfield, Iowa area. Around 6 million of these pigs in captivity are mother sows, which spend nearly their entire life in gestation crates. The dimensions of these cells are typically 7 feet long and 2 feet wide, meaning they cannot even turn around. It's one of the worst types of confinement imaginable. After being artificially inseminated, carrying her young for several months, and giving birth, then she will be moved to a slightly larger cell called a farrowing crate, which gives her just enough room to lay down and nurse her piglets, who are separated from her by metal bars. She will get the luxury of spending as little as 10 days with her babies before the survivors are taken away. Then she is impregnated again and forced to repeat the vicious cycle. Pigs can naturally live to be in their teens, but in this industry, mothers survive to be only about 3 to 4 years old before they're sold for their flesh, after having been abused for the entire duration of their lives. Those who are being used solely for their flesh will be raised in a CAFO for about 6 months until they reach slaughter weight. Then the industry likes to refer to them as hogs, and they are trucked off to a slaughterhouse. According to industry reports, more than 1 million pigs die en route to slaughterhouses every year. During the stressful trip, they are denied food and water and arrive at the slaughterhouses extremely distressed. Before describing what this process entails, I'd like to offer a perspective of what life could look like for these animals. A pig park was created by researchers from the University of Edinburgh in order to study the natural behavior of pigs. They took pigs who would have usually been raised in confinement and instead released them into the makeshift natural environment for observation. To quote an article by Bernard E. Rollin in the book CAFO, in this environment, the sows covered almost a mile a day in foraging, and in keeping up with their reputation as clean animals, they built carefully constructed nests on a hillside so that urine and feces ran downhill. They took turns minding each other's piglets so that each sow could forage. All of this natural behavior is inexpressible in confinement. The process of slaughtering these animals is disgraceful. In America, an average of 355,000 pigs are slaughtered daily. The typical slaughter rate of pigs is 1,000 an hour. Line speeds are quick. Workers monotonously performing the same cold-blooded actions over and over again are desensitized to the violence, while the stench of blood and feces is so thick that you can smell it from the streets. If a pig becomes too ill to make it to the slaughterhouse, workers will shoot them up with as many drugs as necessary to make them ambulatory. As long as they can walk themselves to the kill floor, they can legally be slaughtered and sold for their flesh. There are two primary methods of killing pigs. The first involves using a stun gun, a knife, and a scalding bath of hot water, and the second involves a CO2 gas chamber. To quote Matthew Scully's article in the book CAFO, all of these creatures, and billions more across the earth, go to their deaths knowing nothing of life, and nothing of man, except the foul, tortured existence of the factory farm, having never been outdoors. Can you imagine never stepping foot outside? Never touching the earth? Ever? Having your entire connection to this planet taken from you? It's insane. It's disgraceful. Recently in Iowa, there was a newfound problem for pig farmers. Most slaughterhouses had shut down, and they had nowhere to send the hogs at a slaughter-ready weight. COVID-19 hit Iowa most significantly in the animal agriculture sector, particularly in meatpacking plants and slaughterhouses. This forced the factories, who had literally hundreds of employees test positive for the virus, to either limit operations or shut down completely until a solution came about. This presented a crisis for those who intended to send animals to be killed at these facilities. Many farms elected to mass kill all of the pigs on site and then bury or burn their bodies. Seriously, that's what they did. A method called ventilation shutdown was revived and enacted by major corporations. Iowa Select Farms, Iowa's largest pig-killing company, was a particularly big culprit. An employee at ISF actually reached out to the animal rights organization Direct Action Everywhere to blow the whistle on what was happening because he was so horrified. An investigative team formed, and they were able to get the first footage ever recorded of ventilation shutdown. Here's what they found. They prepare a specific facility for the massacre. Then they unload thousands of pigs into the shed. All airways are sealed off and scalding hot steam is pumped into the building. Over the course of several hours, the pigs are essentially slowly boiled alive while suffocating. The process continues overnight until most of the pigs are dead. The next morning, workers walk through the sea of bodies, searching for signs of life from any of the victims. Some were visibly still breathing, still suffering, so they shot them in the head. According to the depopulation guidelines put forth by the American Veterinary Medical Association, the POD recommends that VSD only be used in facilities with the capability to adequately increase air temperature to a level that causes the generation of latent heat that results in a 95% death in less than an hour. The goal of any depopulation is 100% mortality, and this remains true for VSD. Based on the footage and audio recording obtained by DXE, 100% mortality was certainly not achieved, even after a 12-hour period. It's likely that a few of the pigs appeared dead but were actually unconscious, in which case they were then buried or burned alive. ISF was crudely unable to meet the cruel standards that their very industry put forth for them. ISF has since stopped doing ventilation shutdown. This announcement came following a series of actions by DXE involving activists, including myself and my partner, chaining themselves to the fence of a farm that was about to bring in pigs for VSD, releasing the footage obtained, rescuing a piglet, and burying dead piglets on the home property of Iowa Select Farms CEO Jeff Hansen. That pissed him off. 3 days before my trial, I requested we subpoena a representative for ISF to show them and the court what it was we were protesting and demand justice for these animals. When ISF received the subpoena, they dropped the charges against me. Activism works. It also, unfortunately, encouraged the passing of a new law, House File 775. Under the bill, knowingly entering private property without the owner's consent and taking soil and water samples or samples of an animal's bodily fluid or other animal products would become an aggravated misdemeanor on the first offense. That crime carries a sentence of up to 2 years in prison. A second offense would be a Class D felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. This has obviously made the work we do much more difficult, making the footage and information we have already obtained that much more important. To gain an understanding of the perspective of pigs on these farms, I highly recommend watching this video by Direct Action Everywhere on YouTube. Unseen, a look into the final hours of life for pigs from Smithfield. And this is a kind of graphic picture I got, I think like my first month or two here in Iowa. It was of a dead pig on the loading dock of a CAFO. Blood dripping out of his nose. He looks so sad. Alrighty, well that is the pig section. The next segment of this episode, we're going to be talking to Matt Johnson and, asking him about this trial that now didn't happen, what this is going to mean for activism moving forward. And I'm going to actually have to think of some new questions to ask him because now all the ones I was going to are irrelevant due to the fact that the charges were dropped. All right. Well, I will see you very, very soon. Thank you. All right, and joining us today here, we have Matt Johnson. I was supposed to interview him a few days ago, but things just got kind of crazy with the Iowa Convergence. And so we're here now, so that's what's important. So without further ado, thank you for being on here, Matt. Well, all right, well, first, thanks for joining us today, Matt. So tell me, what were you going to be on trial for?
So the official charges that I was facing were felony burglary and misdemeanor charges of electronic eavesdropping and food operation trespass. So the felony burglary, it was punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And the crime was removing a sick piglet who would have, either died or been killed shortly after we were inside of this facility. So that the state of Iowa powers that be decided, up to 5 years in prison for that one. And electronic eavesdropping is, the term that they use for planting hidden recording devices to capture looking for animal cruelty, that sort of thing. And then food operation trespass is one of Iowa's ag laws, ironically, or not coincidentally, a law that was actually passed in response to investigative work that I led. And then subsequently later on, I was in the vicinity and charged under the very law that was explicitly passed to come after us. So
For sure.
there you go. But, I guess getting away from the letter of the law, like what the stated crimes, so-called, here are, what it's really about, most prominently is this ventilation shutdown, mass pig killing expose that I was involved with, and you had some roles in that one too. I don't know how public all that is, but
yeah, I've spoken about some of that in my book, actually.
Oh, wow, book. I didn't even know there was a book. Wow, book.
Oh yeah, this is literally what this podcast is. It's the Plant Peace podcast, and it's like an audio book of my book, but I'm also like interviewing people and researching things further and like adding in updates as like activism happens. So yeah, funny. Yeah, well, welcome to the Plant Peace podcast.
I guess I get introduced to all the new stuff. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, so I guess for the listeners out there, so this is this ventilation shutdown, just otherworldly, even as an animal rights activist, first time you hear about this is just shocking. And what we're talking about here is this mass pig killing, where they load thousands of pigs into these industrial sheds, and they have the air vents all sealed up, so there's no air leaking in, leaking out from any of the doorways or anything like that. And they have these tubes that are fed into the facility. They pump in heat, they pump in steam, and it's, over the course of literally hours, these animals are just cooked to death. And we have the video and the audio, and they're just screaming for hours on end as this is happening. And this was something that happened right as COVID was sort of just a new and scary thing in the world in the spring of 2020. And the slaughterhouses were sort of key, locations where this was spreading amongst the workers who were working closely together. And so you have slaughterhouses that are shutting down or reducing operations, which then, in terms of the, quote unquote supply chain, these companies like Iowa Select Farms, which is Iowa's leading so-called pork producer, they got nowhere to send their pigs. And this is a company that we already know is routinely in violation of Iowa law in terms of the number of animals that they're cramming into these facilities. So there just is no, wiggle room, so to speak, in terms of when they can't send the pigs to the slaughterhouse, when they thought they were going to, then they kind of feel like they have nowhere to send them. And, as someone who values non-human life, there are options. They're expensive options. They're not good for the bottom line, but land exists. Buildings can be built. People can be paid for overtime. There are options out there, but not options that they were willing to pursue. And so, in the interest of the only thing that they're ever in the interest of, their bottom line, they sought the cheapest solution and completely disregarded animal well-being. And so it arrived at this horrific practice. And we actually were made aware of it, not because of animal rights activists out there doing our muckraking work, not because of, whatever the radicals are up to. It was a truck driver with this very company. Lucas Walker is his name. And he wouldn't, the animal rights activists wouldn't be the first place he would turn to address his concerns. And we certainly weren't. But this was when his own company, is doing horrible things to animals and is unapologetic about it. And law enforcement at all levels, at the state level, the local level, is not doing anything about it. And so really as a last resort, he's like, just having a crisis of conscience, he reaches out to us actually under a fake name, because he's been told all sorts of horrible things about what animal rights activists are all about. So, it's, I guess, understandable that originally it was under a fake name. And one thing leads to another. We come out here and we're, it's a several week long process, and we document this and we show the world, what's going on here? And so we're really proud that we were able to do that. It's amazing, people like you just sprung up out of nowhere when kind of called to duty, so to speak, and the prosecution really flowed out of that, and that put a big mark on a big target on our back. I was facing charges, you were facing charges, and
Yeah.
it went the same way with you. Tellingly,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, trial, let's do this thing. Let's get up here and let's have a real conversation about this.
Yeah.
Even if maybe there's guilty, maybe it ends up guilty, but let's get Iowa Select Farm CEO Jeff Hansen up here and talk to us about how necessary this was and what alternatives is this guy who has a private jet, who had, he's the CEO of this company that's worth upwards of $1 billion. Like, let's hear it out. They didn't want to trial with you. They've now dismissed charges on me twice just prior to trial. And, anybody who's paying attention really knows what's going on here.
Yeah, really. It's kind of like we've been actively trying almost to get them to trial. Like, hey, you aren't answering for what you're doing anywhere else. Like, answer in a court of law. And they are just progressively actively choosing to not do that, even after originally pressing charges, but then maybe thinking about it more thoroughly and being like, oh, that's not gonna go well for us. Like hearing, having a jury hear their victims' screams when their whole point of having these CAFOs where there aren't windows and there are laws passed to make sure that no one can go in there. The point is so that no one can hear their screams, no one can see what they're doing. And so the actions that we and obviously a lot of other people too are doing, it's directly opposing really what they want. And so it's terrifying for them to go to court, but I feel like at some point they're gonna have to, but I guess we'll see how that goes moving forward. Yeah, we were all really shocked. I guess not all of us. I was really shocked that your charges were dropped. Like I was all prepared. I was excited to go to court. I was like, this is gonna go good. I think, like I really hoped that this would actually happen. 3 days, I think, before is when they dropped. It's funny they dropped. Maybe it wasn't 3. I thought it was 3 days.
2 days when we got word, and then one day, the day before, was when it officially happened, and we filed a motion resisting the dismissal of charges, saying no, we want to be heard out in court. And the judge was all kinds of confused on that one. He was trying to pay value, and oh gosh,
that's okay.
Lucas is calling me. Maybe we don't. I don't know. It's kind of
that was honestly kind of great. Yeah, it's like mid interview, and it's like, oh, there's that whistleblower we were just talking about, still blowing the whistle.
All right, where were we?
All right. All right. Well, my next question we already kind of talked about a little bit, but is there, aside from them just like not wanting to be exposed, is there a reason you think they dropped all of the charges? And I mean, this was, a felony charge. Like you could have very well gone to prison for several years had this gone, bad. Why do you think that they chose all of the sudden to just abandon the case?
Yeah, I think that we really got them in a pickle here. They, kind of have to weigh do they just sort of let it still be the norm, let us keep doing it, and from their perspective, keep encouraging people to do this sort of a thing, and from our perspective, or do they kind of like bite the bullet and go to court and have it all bare for the whole world to see? And it was, they probably had a pretty good idea. They were kind of bluffing all along, but maybe at the end it was even a little more scary of a PR nightmare than they had even anticipated. I know from our perspective, I'll tell you behind the scenes, we were kind of laying low on pushing media coverage until like we had media interest. We were just kind of sitting on it a little bit, being like, hey, maybe if you don't want to reach out to them just yet, it might be the way to go. And like, we're not like pitching it super hard. We're just trying to not, really put it to them too much, because we wanted this trial to happen. And I mean, last couple of days right before trial, Court TV, we're hearing people who are interested. So it's at that, that's one big thing. And I mean, the New York Times was talking about writing a story, Harper's Magazine, the Associated Press, like Des Moines Register, a lot of like the local outlets. Guardian, Intercept, Vox, just a huge amount of attention there.
Yeah, like all of the major news outlets, essentially, from all the names you just said. So it would have been huge. And so yeah,
Mhm.
it makes sense why they pulled out. So what does this mean for the animal rights movement, moving forward, that they keep dropping these cases? Like, how do you guys plan to move forward from this?
Yeah, I think it should be very encouraging stuff. It should be, just further kind of normalizing the right kind of world. And, one day I sure hope and think that we'll be to a place where, um, well, at some point these facilities don't even exist. And then maybe a little sooner than that would be where it's legal and normalized that people can go in and rescue animals that are suffering. And maybe a step closer than that will be like when you have like a legal case where there's a single decision by a jury that gets there. And then I think maybe one step where we were a week ago and where we're now is like this, where we have a case that gets dropped. So it's all just kind of, chip away at getting to the kind of world where we want to get to, where animals are respected as the sentient friends of ours as we know them to be.
Yeah, most definitely. So a lot of the actions that you've done, I mean, you were about to go to trial, and this is not the first time that you've been about to go to trial, correct? Yeah, they've already dropped charges on you before
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
most people, and like, I mean, myself included, I have gotten arrested a few times for this, but now I'm playing very cautious because I am, in some legal trouble still. Most people are not willing to, do things that are arrestable actions, things that put them at legal risk, or, even potential and physical harm, because, like Iowa, you can carry a weapon, and if someone's trespassing on your property, you can shoot them, and like that would likely go down in court fairly fine. And so at times, this can be life threatening to go in and document, these cases of abuse and even go in and rescue animals. So why is this something that you're willing to, do? Why is this something that you feel like impassioned to go forth and do despite the risks and possible ramifications?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think that it has a lot to do with people's environment. I think that people, yeah, everybody is kind of making sacrifices of their own sort. Maybe most people, whether it's for your family or taking care of a loved one, and setting aside maybe years of your life to take care of somebody, or just in various ways. So I think that um, a lot of people are doing things that are similar-ish. This is just kind of in a little bit, a different context than is sort of like normalized in our world. But I think if you have the right kind of support around you, a community of people who believe in the same sort of things, then it makes things, you see things with a lot more clarity, and then there's sort of more. I mean, I'm not gonna say there's not fear there, but you're more like at peace with it, and
Mm.
feel very I feel very good that the people around me are going to sort of capitalize on it. So whatever the outcome might be. So if it ends up sitting in a prison cell, then that's what it's going to be. That's what it could have been. And but I'd make it through. I'm not. It's not like I'm a pig sitting in a gestation crate. A prison cell
Yeah.
is a pretty far cry from that. So kind of trying to keep things in perspective too.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, definitely think like, what you said about community is like really important with that, because when you're somewhere where you don't have, someone able to do jail support or take care of your companion animals, or able to, like you have a lawyer like ready, or all of that, like it can be much scarier. Like I know with like my first arrest with DXC, I mean, I was sitting in jail, but with like 30 other women, and it was kind of just like we just had a nice time. Really, it wasn't a bad time, and I was just like, wow, this is a so different than other people's experiences. And so I think one of my favorite things that DXC has cultivated is like the community aspect of that and how, supportive it really is. And so that's good that, that is able to like empower people to take this sort of action because they don't feel alone.
Yeah, actually, I mean, one quick note on that part is actually was interesting that we had a registrant at the Iowa Port Congress who was so kind as to record and pass along to us this seminar that had an FBI agent. I don't know what the word would be, but he's a weapons of mass destruction specialist. So of course that's completely relevant to animal rights activism. And he was talking about and saying, gleefully, or good for, that oh, well, the animal rights movement is pretty fractured, and people are, you got local groups, but they're not really coordinating anything, and just really just, in some ways kind of just downplaying the threat, saying like, you got to keep an eye out for these folks, but they're really kind of, not the biggest threat, which obviously is they're kind of they know what the theory of change would be that would work, and I think they do underestimate us, but yeah, it's like on all sides of this, well, we kind of have an idea that not only something like trial is going to be really ugly for them and really beneficial for us, but that us all kind of coming together and seizing that collective power is kind of how we get from A to B, and they're doing whatever they can to keep that from happening. But really, there's not a debate about how powerful that sort of thing is.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully, we can grow even more coordinated. I kind of stick it to the ex FBI agent there. Yeah, in areas like this Iowa convergence that happened because of your trial, like generally here there isn't super coordinated, organized actions, and there's different reasons to it. Most vegans aren't going to move to Iowa. It's not the most appealing area to live. As someone who cares about animals, any direction from my house, if you drive long enough, you're going to find a dumpster full of corpses, and you don't have to drive that long. And that's super unfortunate, but unfortunately this is really where activism is super needed. And that's why, I feel like this convergence was really powerful, having all these people that do deeply care and are willing to, go and investigate things. Hopefully, if there's another trial brought here, then we can have another little convergence. And we'll see. We'll see. Well, okay, I just have one more question for you. So is there any particular message that you would like to relay before we finish up? Anything you just really want to share for anyone listening here?
Well, the one thing that sticks out to me is that I hope that people look at a situation like this trial in this circumstance, and they are heartened, and that it helps people to believe in the power that each of us have. And maybe that seems cliche, but it is just, you see these examples of people, and it's can be a small group of people that just are really going to come together and take collective action. And in a place like Iowa, where they have these ag laws, and they have prosecutions. And another thing our friend with the FBI was talking about, he's like, yeah, well, when we've had these prosecutions and passed these laws, they've succeeded in tamping down the activism activity. And it's very understandable when you don't have, like you said, the supportive community and so on, that people, are understandably scared, and organizations you have resources to protect, and they have that sort of stuff. And so prosecutions and ag laws and so on can push people away. But, we can also come together and be courageous and be, take calculated risks, and we can, it can push things in the complete opposite direction. And I think right now they are really just reeling. I think that for them to be in a situation where they're really just no legitimate means for them to solve the problem that they have on their hands. Like, how are you going to get rid of this never-ending PR nightmare? It's like, well, you sure as heck aren't going to do it by having an open public conversation. So what are you going to do with it? So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just encourage people like get active. You can check out obviously the group I'm involved with, Direct Action Everywhere. I think we are doing lots of things right, and I would encourage people to check out DXC, and really you can dig into the blogs and some of the foundational kind of theory of change of like sort of like the why we do what we do, and get active and organize and start a chapter and join up with DXC Actions and be part of the greatest liberation movement in world history.
Yay, yay. Well, awesome. I hope that a lot of people listening to this really heard that and took that to heart, and hopefully some new activists may spring up out of this. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for coming to Iowa. I know it was well, you came to Iowa before that. Thank you for bringing this activism to Iowa, because it's deeply, deeply needed. And I hope that I see you again, maybe in another trial that may or may not be canceled. We'll see. But yeah, I appreciate you a lot for being here today, for being here in general, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Diane. Thanks for everything.
Yeah.